About 31 years ago in 1989, Toyota introduced to the US their Lexus luxury division. It was a direct response to Honda and Nissan's luxury divisions, which beat Lexus to the market about 2 to 3 years prior. Now, unlike its two other Japanese rivals, Lexus enjoyed astonishing growth, and they really were the only Japanese brand to be considered true Tier 1 luxury in the face of competition from Europe, such as BMW, Mercedes, and Audi. Now, just like every other luxury brand, Lexus has enjoyed their fair shares of ups and downs. However, today, Lexus has been on a continuous downward spiral. And in today's video, we're going to go over some of the reasons why that is and see where Lexus is heading in the future. Now, before we take a look at where Lexus is heading in the future, we need to first look back and see where Lexus came from in their past. Now, I want you to think back to January 1989. This was at the North American International Auto Show, where Toyota finally took the wraps off of Lexus, and they really shocked the world with the LS 400 flagship luxury sedan. It was a rear-wheel drive, large luxury sedan powered by a V8 engine, which was definitely very different versus what Honda introduced in their front-wheel drive based Acura Legend sedan. Now, it eventually went on sale in America about 9 months later, and it was sold alongside a smaller Lexus ES 250, which was based off of the second generation Toyota Camry. Now, first 4 months of sales in America were relatively good. Lexus sold a total of 16,400 cars, which pretty much matched their expectation of 16,000 cars that they had set for the first year in 1989. Now, sales drastically increased by 1990, and in the first full year, Lexus moved a total of a little over 64,000 cars. That was also where they started to expand their sales and reach across the globe, where Lexus expanded sales to the UK, to Switzerland, to Canada, and to Australia. In 1991, the first ever Lexus coupe was introduced in the form of the SC 400, which was essentially just a Toyota Supra in Lexus drag. Later that year, Lexus also introduced a completely redesigned version of the ES sedan, which was now renamed the ES 300 because it had a larger 3-liter V6 and it was based off of the third generation Camry. Now, by 1992, Lexus sales had really started to gain momentum, and the company moved a total of 71,000 cars here in America. By 1993, Lexus had started to expand their lineup again in the US, introducing the mid-size rear-wheel drive Lexus GS, which was different from the ES because it was a rear drive architecture and it was designed to be more like a BMW 5 Series and Mercedes-Benz E-Class fighter. Later that year in 1994, they also introduced an all-new version of their flagship, the LS 400, which of course got larger, got more luxurious inside. Pricing for the LS also increased by about 18% versus back when it was new in 1989, which was then priced at around $35,000. By 1996, Lexus introduced their first ever SUV. That's right, the LX 450. A lot of you pretty much will confuse the RX as being the first ever Lexus SUV. Technically, it was the LX 450, which was based off of the Toyota Land Cruiser. It had a 4.5-liter inline 6, a naturally aspirated straight 6 engine. Now, of course, in 1999, that's when Lexus introduced the RX crossover, which was the first ever mid-size luxury crossover SUV that was based off of a car. This is a car that really became the best-selling Lexus vehicle in the early 2000s, and it really helped the company reach 1 million units sold by the year Y2K. Now, by the early 2000s, we saw a complete global reorganization of Lexus because, as you guys know, Lexus had exploded to become a huge global brand, offering their nameplate in a lot of other countries versus Acura versus Infiniti, its two Japanese rivals. Now, by 2005, Lexus had split off from parent company Toyota to have their own design, engineering, manufacturing, and PR department, which again helped Lexus become more of that Tier 1 luxury player, a title that the other Japanese brands like Acura and Nissan had failed to actually recognize to compete head-to-head with the best from Europe. By 2004, Lexus had sold its 2 millionth car, and it held the title as the best-selling luxury brand in the States from 2001 all the way to 2011, when it lost that title to BMW and Mercedes that year. By the 2010 decade, Lexus was trying to recover their market share, and they'd started to introduce a new lineup of high-performance F vehicles, because as you guys know, Lexus started to develop a reputation for being a boring, bland librarian's car. It just didn't have any soul, any sex appeal. Now, of course, they started back in 2008 with the ISF, which had a fire-breathing 5-liter naturally aspirated V8 with around 416 horsepower. This was going head-to-head with cars like the BMW M3 and Mercedes-Benz C63 AMG. Now, of course, in 2012, they introduced their first ever supercar, a car that had over 500 horsepower from a naturally aspirated V10. This was known as the Lexus LFA. It also had a pretty outrageous $400,000 sticker price. Now, of course, sales eventually recovered, with Lexus's best year happening in 2015, where the company moved a little under 345,000 units. However, even with that many vehicles sold, Lexus still was not able to surpass both BMW and Mercedes in terms of US sales volumes. So although Lexus had their best year ever in 2015 with a little under 345,000 units sold, as I mentioned earlier, it was not enough for them to surpass BMW and Mercedes in terms of volume here in the North American lineup. Now, in fact, if you look at their sales figures in 2019, they're roughly down about 15% in total sales figures versus 5 years ago in 2015. Remember, they had their best year. So now that we've gone over a little bit about their background with Lexus and where they came from, let's break down their entire US portfolio here in America. And today, Lexus offers a total of 11 different models to choose from. So breaking down the list, let's start with the sales figures here for each specific model. Let's first start with the cars, starting with the Lexus IS. Remember, their compact rear-wheel drive luxury sports sedan. This is a car that competes head-on with the BMW 3 Series. It's been in the lineup since 2001. And last year, Lexus sold a total of 14,920 units. They were down roughly 34.9% in terms of volume versus the same time frame in 2018. Now, the Lexus IS has a two-door brother that's known as the Lexus RC. That's been in the lineup for the last 5 years or so. And Lexus sold a total of 4,591 units in 2019. That's down a staggering 36.7% versus the same time period in 2018. Now, that number doesn't surprise me because it's a sporty two-door coupe. Nobody in America really buys that. So those vehicles are basically down in sales across every other manufacturer that still offers a vehicle like that. Moving down the lineup, let's talk about the Lexus ES. This is a car that was fully redesigned in 2019, and it's one of the longest running vehicles in the Lexus lineup. Basically, it's been around since the Lexus LS 400, so it's been around for the better part of 30 years. Last year, Lexus sold a total of 51,336 units here in America. This used to be Lexus's best-selling model before the Lexus RX took that position about 2 decades ago. The Lexus ES in total was up about 5.9% in terms of volume versus that same time period in 2018. Arguably, of course, it was helped by the fact that it was an all-new generation last year. The Lexus GS has been in the lineup for quite a few years as well. This is a car that's roughly the same size as the ES. However, unlike the ES, which is a front-wheel drive Toyota Camry Avalon-based platform, the GS is a rear-drive mid-size sedan that goes head-to-head with cars like the Mercedes-Benz E-Class and BMW 5 Series. Now, last year, Lexus sold a total of 3,378 units in all of 2019. That's down a staggering 48.8% versus the same time period in 2018. Now, of course, it's a mid-size sedan that doesn't really sell really well in today's market, but just for reference, a Genesis GV80 sold roughly twice as many vehicles, and it's also a car that is getting slightly old, but it's really shocking to see the Lexus GS do so poorly, which is probably why it is on the chopping blocks in terms of staying in the lineup in the next couple of years. Continuing to move on, let's talk about the Lexus LS. This is their flagship luxury sedan, their BMW 7 Series and Mercedes-Benz S-Class fighter. It was all new for 2018. The Lexus LS sold a total of 5,528 units, so it did outsell the Lexus GS, and this is a car, of course, that starts at around $75,000. Unfortunately, those numbers are down a staggering, again, 40.8% versus the same time period in 2018. Again, everybody is buying crossovers. Big, expensive, full-size luxury sedans just aren't selling. Now, how about the Lexus LC? This is the gorgeous, drop-dead gorgeous concept car looking luxury two-door coupe that's been in the market for actually the better part of 4 years now almost. Now, Lexus managed to sell a total of 1,219 units back in 2019. That's down a whopping 38.4% versus the same time period in 2018. Of course, the Lexus LC is going to be more of a niche car. You're going to be spending close to 6 figures or over 6 figures for a car like that. So it doesn't surprise me that the car sold so little. So out of the entire Lexus car portfolio, only the Lexus ES was actually up in terms of sales. Everything else was down. So let's move on to their crossovers, because as you guys know, everybody wants to buy a crossover. There's probably some good news there for Lexus as well. Now let's start with the Lexus UX, their entry-level crossover that's been on the market for a couple years now. Lexus sold a total of 16,725 units in all of 2019. That's up a ridiculous 3,500%, 3,592%. Now, of course, the Lexus UX went on sale at the very end of 2018, so that number is kind of not really usable. Just know that the 2019 model year was the first full year of sales for the UX, which is why Lexus sold a total of 16,700 units of that car. Now, moving on to the Lexus NX. This is their compact crossover SUV that competes with cars like the BMW X1 or X3 or Mercedes-Benz GLC or GLB. It's kind of a tweener car. Lexus sold a total of 58,715 units. That actually outsold the Lexus ES. Remember, these compact crossovers do particularly well. Despite it having some rather decent numbers, it was actually down 5.4% from that same time period in 2018. If you guys have seen a few of my reviews on the Lexus NX, you'll know that it's not particularly one of my favorite vehicles because it's just not very space efficient. Other crossovers offer more space considering the size, and they also offer better performance from the 2-liter turbocharged engine that car comes with, or you can also get it with a hybrid. Now, of course, the Lexus RX. This is a car that is their bestseller. It's been the best-selling luxury nameplate in America for the better part of a decade and a half, maybe even 2 decades. And Lexus managed to sell a total of 111,036 units in 2019. That's actually down a rather minuscule 0.5% versus that same time period in 2018. Remember, this has been consistently the best-selling luxury vehicle in America for quite some time. Unfortunately, it was overtaken by the Tesla Model 3 in 2019 because Tesla moved around 158,000 Model 3. So if you count that as a luxury branded car, technically the RX is no longer the best-selling luxury nameplate in the States. Moving down the SUV lineup, let's talk about the Lexus GX. This is a car that is, or a truck that is based off of the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado and of course the Toyota 4Runner. And Lexus actually sold a total of 25,945 units last year. It was down about 2.9% versus the same time period in 2018. Remember, this shares a platform with the Toyota 4Runner. In comparison, Toyota does roughly about 125,000 4Runners in that same time period. It doesn't surprise me. The Lexus is considerably more expensive, and it's also the oldest vehicle in the Lexus lineup. It still uses the old touchscreen from Lexus's about a decade and a half ago. So if you're looking for old school luxury, the GX has your number all over it, and surprisingly, it still sells rather well. Now, of course, the flagship SUV in the Lexus lineup, the Lexus LX, and the last model that I'm going to talk about in the US portfolio, Lexus managed to sell a total of 4,718 units last year. That's down a rather minuscule 0.7% versus the same time period in 2018. Now, as you guys know, the LX 570 shares a platform with the Toyota Land Cruiser. Now, for reference, the Land Cruiser, Toyota sold roughly 3,536 units in that same time period in 2019. So obviously the Lexus LX outsells the Land Cruiser. That doesn't surprise me because the LX is about $5,000 to $10,000 more expensive. We're talking about a $90,000 Lexus versus an $85,000 Toyota. It's a no-brainer for me why people tend to buy the Lexus. If you're going to be spending that kind of money, you want to have the premium brand, and the LX just has a much nicer interior versus the Land Cruiser. Now, when you add up the total sales of every vehicle in the Lexus portfolio here in America, it totals out to about 298,114 units sold in all of 2019. That's down a pretty minuscule 0.1% versus the same time period in 2019. Now, of course, those numbers are pretty good, especially when you start looking at the Lexus rivals, the other luxury brands. Now, let's start with Acura. Acura sold a total of 156,366 cars in 2019. So as you can see, Lexus outsells Acura basically 2-1. Now, moving on to their other Japanese competitor, Infiniti. Infiniti, of course, is all over the media right now. A lot of people are seeing that Infiniti is in trouble. Infiniti sold a total of 117,708 cars last year. So as you can see, Lexus basically outsells Infiniti 3-1, which is why, again, Lexus is the only Japanese luxury brand that's really known as a tier 1 player that goes head to head with the Europeans. Now, speaking of those Europeans, let's look at the Mercedes Benz brand here in America. Last year, Mercedes sold a total of 357,729 cars in 2019. That makes it the best-selling luxury brand in America. As you can see, it outsold Lexus by nearly 60,000 units. Now, it doesn't surprise me. Mercedes is very successful here. They also have a plethora of models to choose from, more so even than Lexus. Now, moving on to BMW, the rival to Mercedes, BMW sold a total of 324,826 cars in 2019. That again is slightly less than Mercedes, but slightly more than Lexus, which puts Lexus in third place among the rivals for sales volume here in America. Now, just for and giggles, let's talk about Audi. Audi sold a total of 224,111 cars last year. Again, roughly 75,000 units less versus Lexus. Audi has been growing over the years. All three German players, basically Mercedes, BMW, and Audi, have been growing in sales every year, while Lexus has been falling in sales. So again, that's not a good thing if you are a Lexus PR rep. Now, moving on to JLR, I'm going to combine Jaguar and Land Rover together. They're known as JLR. They sold a total of 125,787 cars. Now, obviously, Jaguar probably only sold about a third of that number, while the rest were Land Rovers. Land Rover, as you guys know, is an SUV brand. And last but not least, let's talk about Tesla, because they're always in the media. Tesla sold a total of 192,250 cars in America last year. That's actually up about 0.3%. Globally, Tesla did roughly double that number, but as you can see, Tesla is growing. And for those of you who are skeptical about Tesla and stealing their market share, as you can see, nearly 200,000 units where they sold more cars than Acura and Infiniti. You better damn believe that people are buying electric cars, and other manufacturers need to take notice. So obviously Lexus is in trouble. They need to do something drastic in order to improve their market share, gain back a lot of luxury car buyers, because they've been migrating toward Tesla, they've been migrating toward all the German brands, and Lexus is in a really great position to do so, because as you guys know, Infiniti isn't doing well, Acura isn't doing well. Lexus has the best reputation, although Genesis is going to be coming hard for their blood, and if Lexus doesn't do something quick, they will be suffering even more as soon as Genesis starts ramping up their dealers here in the US and starts launching their newest onslaught of products, like the GV80, of course the redesigned G80 sedan, and of course the upcoming GV70 and the refreshed G70. Now, let's talk a little bit about the changes that Lexus has coming for the next 24 months. And this is information that was actually leaked a couple of months ago. There are a lot of changes coming for Lexus. So let's start with basically the sedans. The LS and ES, which were new for 2018 and 2019, will be getting a refresh for 2022. Now, basically, 2022 is going to be a big year. This will just be a refresh, so you'll see slightly different styling tweaks on the exterior, maybe an update to the interior, maybe an update or so to the powertrain. Usually, that's typically not the case. The next vehicle that is going to be getting some significant changes for 2022 is the next generation Lexus IS. This is a car that's been around since 2014. It is in desperate need of a redesign. The next generation IS should be shown around 2021. At that same time period, the Lexus GS midsize sedan will probably be discontinued because, as you guys saw from the sales numbers, it just doesn't sell, and Lexus figures the ES and a possible fuel cell vehicle will take the place of the GS in the lineup when it makes its departure. Another vehicle that'll be getting a facelift for 2022 will be the Lexus UX crossover. Now, of course, this car was just introduced last year, but it could use some changes already. And honestly, 2022 is a little bit ways away. That car needs desperately more power. And really, that's the only thing it needs, although it is a little bit small on the inside, but that's kind of the point of that small subcompact CUV segment. The Lexus NX has been around since 2015, and it is due for a full redesign in 2022. And Lexus promises there are big changes coming for that vehicle. As you guys know, it shares the same platform as the Toyota RAV4, although the new RAV4 is riding on the different TNGA K platform, which I expect the NX to move to that platform when it's redesigned. Lexus has basically said a plug-in hybrid version of that car is coming. Currently, they do have a hybrid, but you should expect to get at least 40 miles of EV range. Remember, it's going to share a powertrain with the RAV4 Prime. Now, I suspect the Lexus should get better range because Toyota already says the RAV4 Prime gets 50 miles of range. So the Lexus, I'm expecting to have more range and more horsepower. And their company is also saying it'll get a 14-inch, that's right, a 14-inch infotainment tablet-like display. And it should be a touchscreen, just like the 12-inch display that I tried in the 2020 RX. So as you can see, Lexus is planning some big changes. This will be the first Lexus model, apparently, to get that new 14-inch touchscreen. And of course, we can't talk about changes to the Lexus lineup without mentioning the RX. This is the most important vehicle in the Lexus lineup because it is their best seller. And it is due for a full redesign in 2023. I know 2023 seems so far away, especially since the Highlander is new for 2020. We'll probably see Lexus show the actual RX in 2022. So 2 years from now, but it won't be a 2023 model. Lexus is basically promising that the next generation RX will be riding on the same TNGA K platform as the Highlander, and it will actually have a third row that is usable for kids and even small adults. As you guys know, the current RXL is just pathetic in terms of its space on the inside. It was basically built to give dealers a third row in the RX since they've been clamoring about it for years. Now, of course, I've been talking about all the practical vehicles that Lexus makes, but what about enthusiasts? Lexus, again, started the F Performance division about a decade ago, and enthusiasts have been begging Lexus for even more performance. And they're gonna finally get it in the year 2022 in the form of the LCF. That's right, an F-ified version of that gorgeous, sexy concept coupe, and it's supposed to have an all-new twin turbocharged V8. That's right, a V8 with 2 turbos on it. So think Mercedes AMG, BMW M competition, and it should be making around 600 horsepower when that comes to market in the next 2 years. And honestly, where the hell has it been? I've been so excited for an F-ified version of the LC, and the convertible, of course, will be coming out later this year. I was supposed to be driving it in June, but unfortunately coronavirus is still going on, which is why I'm sitting here in my office talking about the numbers. But the LCF is probably my favorite, future product that's coming from Lexus, and it can't come soon enough. Now, the Lexus LX may be the company's flagship SUV for now. However, they are working on a flagship crossover SUV. This is going to compete with cars like the Mercedes-Benz GLS, the BMW X7, the Cadillac XT6, the Lincoln Aviator, and so forth. Lexus is going to be calling this flagship crossover the LQ, which I don't really like the name LQ. It sounds like some kind of electronic or a phone. Anyways, it'll be coming in 2022, and it'll share the platform and architecture with the LS sedan. So basically think of it as an SUV version of the LS, which basically means it'll have the same powertrain. So you'll have a hybrid V6 with around 354 horsepower. You'll also get a twin turbo V6 with around 416 horsepower. And there's rumors that Lexus would do an F-ified version of the LQ, but this is basically going to be the flagship crossover. Expect to pay nearly $100,000 for this car whenever they do introduce it in the next 2 years. And last but not least, the LX will finally be getting the full redesign it is needed for the better part of a decade and a half now. Big changes are coming for 2022 when the all-new Lexus LX arrives. Now, of course, the Land Cruiser is based, or the LX is based off of the Land Cruiser, and unfortunately, Toyota sources are saying that the Land Cruiser won't be carried over in America, at least not in its current form. There's rumors that the Land Cruiser will become kind of a Jeep Wrangler, so a less expensive competitor. But regardless, the LX is going to be kind of like Lexus's version of the Bentley Bentayga. It'll get a completely new chassis, completely new powertrain, maybe even a hybridized powertrain to improve the fuel economy. It will apparently stay more off-road oriented, so think kind of more Range Rover competitor with air suspension. You'll be able to take it off-road. It's a car that we've desperately needed from Lexus because, as you guys know, their lineup is old, but their trucks and SUVs are extremely old. And Lexus has been very much resting on their laurels there, which I don't really blame them. They have a strong reputation for reliability and build quality, and they're still making a ton of money from building old products. But regardless, if Lexus is going to move up in their position in terms of having more sales volume or sales dominance here in America and be considered, again, a true tier 1 luxury player, these new products are what they desperately need. So Lexus, they can't come soon enough, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they cook up. So there are a lot of changes coming for the Lexus brand in the next 24 to 36 months, and if the company is ever going to regain that title as the best-selling luxury vehicle nameplate here in the States, they're really going to need a bunch of new products. I mean, BMW and Mercedes have taken that title away from Lexus for nearly the last decade, and a bunch of new products is exactly what the company needs. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing a lot of new products. Cars like this 2020 RX that I'm showing you here, it's a very nice car and it got a refresh this year, but it just doesn't hold a candle to a lot of the German and Korean and even American competition that we have out there. Because remember, luxury buyers are very finicky buyers, and there's a lot of choices out there, especially if you're going to be spending that kind of money. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my video on the history of Lexus, where they were in the past, where they're headed in the future. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.